Yes, it can. You see the baby before they are born, they are feeding and everything through the umbilical cord. So until they come up and breathe oxygen for the lungs to open, baby will always be okay. So even when they push the baby under the water, the baby will still stay in that state until when they are exposed to oxygen. And then they breathe. Once the lungs open, putting them back, they breathe. Because then the system has flipped. But some of these methods are all on YouTube, guys. You guys are so lucky. Just go on YouTube and look at all these methods and learn yourself on some of these things before you even go to our doctors. But when you go to our doctors, they'll be able to tell you the advantages and disadvantages and the practicality. Okay? And that's why we are saying that when you look at Uganda, when you look in Uganda here, our methods are limited, maybe for defined reasons. But when you have some women, for example, without limbs, someone has to climb the common bed, and they don't have these, what are they called? The steps, the wooden steps. What does that mean for a woman who comes to labor without limbs? What if a woman doesn't have those legs? Because our delivery bed has these clamps which are supposed to hold your legs. Now what if a woman doesn't have the legs? So there are all these things. So when you start talking about people who are differently abled, all these things begin to build in. But do not forget that the limitations that we see are not defined by doctors per se, or the midwives. It's part of our system. So if there are gaps, we must understand where there are gaps. Okay? And for sure, it's going to be very unlikely to find a doctor who is going to say that, here at our maternity ward, actually, you see that garden there. Some women, when they come here, they prefer to give birth from there. So we've created a garden. Come. This is very traditional. But even those traditional methods, they have advantages. Why do you think they always use the bitoke and they would squat between the bitoke and they are looking for pressure points and whatever, you know? Maybe it's also a form of distraction. What I would say is if you're curious why a woman would be so inclined to use that method, go and talk to the traditional birth attendants. You'll be surprised the kind of knowledge you will pick. Okay? The more knowledge you pick about this subject, the better it positions you to write stories that are intriguing. You remember yesterday when we talked about the abattoir? Get the experience. Okay? Yeah. Feel it for yourself. Who else? Yes.
Good morning, colleagues. Good morning. I'm Sandra Right, also managing what came from my realization is this habit of telling stories, most common among this class. If I can give you a quick narration of what I at some point went through. Unfortunately, my brother Hussein has not come yet. We investigated and found out that a number of city tycoons tend to deal with these guys in the Ministry of Lands, and then afterwards get fake land titles, where in the process they end up going to government for compensation in case of any construction, let's say roads or any other. So we wrote a story, and then one of the biggest media houses here, I'm sorry to say, jumped on it. He wrote the story, published it, not based on facts. Normally we call it words, bias and we published it. Then there are about 2 days moving on the streets. I saw an apology of them on the front page apologizing to these city tycoons. Then my brother called me. You see now what you've done? We've just started our online and then we are going to end up in trouble. Please pull out that story before they can come to us. And I told him, please, first get a copy and go through what the other people wrote. And on reading the story, they did not have any facts because on writing mine, I had interviewed several people who had confirmed that, including the two lands ministers. So what I would tell you journalists, as long as your reporting is based on facts, you can never halt a story over intimidation. And don't ever fear because someone bigger than you has apologized, you should also go low and apologize. As long as you're based on facts, amongst us there is a habit of washing stories. I write a story, because you write for a bigger media house, you think you will have a good mileage than me, you jump on my story, wash it, not based on facts, I did my exclusives, then you report. At the end of the day, you land into trouble, but me, I will not. So we have to be more conscious when reporting, based on facts, balance the story, because we even went ahead to call these city tycoons, whom I won't mention names, and they were just bashing and abusing us. So I included that as a story. And then this new vision guy did not even mind or bother to call them. So in the essence of writing these life-saving stories, most so critically, stories to do with maternal. You're saving a story, and you should not bend so low over intimidation, because trust, sorry to say, trust is like virginity. Once lost, it will never come back. The moment you apologize over a story because you're intimidated, because you've been paid, the next morning you're going out to these people whose story you killed, wanting another story of your interest or any other, you will get disappointed. And at some point you will file these stories for awards. How will you file an award-winning story when you're the same journalist who killed someone's story? So that is something I came to realize that is complex about this class.
Thank you very much. You wanted to say something? We were reviewing what we did from yesterday.
Yesterday, me what I picked that never hurry to write a story without facts. First look for the facts and then write up your story. And then basing on research, like me who sits in the studio and hosts these health programs, it is very important for the research. If I research on something, then when I host somebody from health, I will host that person when I have the facts. You will not manage to run away from the facts.
Yes.
Because some people, when you bring out something, they try to dodge.
Yes.
They dodge around, and then you also go with that. But when you have the facts, he tries to dodge, and then you wait him or her from here. You trap him, and eventually after the program, you will have scored, you will have brought up the information that helps the community to understand what should be done and what should not be done.
Okay.
I think.
Everyone seems to be talking about facts.
Yeah.
And I'm going to come back to that issue because there is a pertinent issue that we need to raise, but maybe I first have his comment first. Yes.
My colleague just made me feel like sharing my experience.
Briefly.
Now I'm a journalist, started with actually in the newsroom before even going to the field. So by then was still the state minister for Karamoja, Mr. Chizige. I wanted a comment.
Chizige
Moses. So I wanted a comment when I was in the newsroom. So I called him. He picked and he answered, but when he was responding, he didn't know I was recording him because I was used to have our line in the newsroom. You call when it is recording. Even when he starts saying, what you're recording everything. So after giving me the comment I wanted, he again realized it was going to cause problems there. Then he started threatening. Who is this one I'm talking to? And I was very open. I said, I'm Senyonga. Please just make sure you don't air anything, what I've just said. Was like, again, why? He said, and you're joking? I'm going to call your boss. I have the ability even to switch off that radio station. I was recording everything. You know, I was just a new person in the field. I was like, now I'm dead. So I called my bosses. Should I drop the story? That means I was saying that it's going to switch off this station. Then my ED asked, did you record everything the way it is? I said, yes. He said, okay. Then he also called the boss, the ED himself. He said, so he threatened to switch off the station? He said, yes. Then he said, you put the store on air and you wait, just make sure you keep all those recordings. So I did that. In the evening, we have a bulletin at 9 p.m. He had even himself saying, if you air the story, I'm going to switch off that station. The results I don't want to share here.
Okay. I know the rest of us yesterday introduced ourselves, but she did not. Just introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Patricia Campasa. I'm a health reporter at the Infinite Magazine.
Welcome, Patricia.
Thank you.
Anyone else? We are through? Good. The point I wanted to raise was talking about facts and data. There is always sometimes when you're watching media practitioners engaging with respondents, they go into a dynamic. And quite honestly, sometimes it irritates me in the sense that the facts are there. Sometimes even you as a media person, you have them, but you're trying to borderline so much this idea of you're not supposed to give your opinions, and that's okay. You're supposed to remain objective. If the other person is the respondent and the principal respondent, they are asked the questions and their job is to respond. But here's my question. If you already have the facts and this person, whatever they are responding, they are either dilly-dallying, they've mastered the craft of dodging your question, and sometimes they give blatant lies. How do you deal with that? And for me, I'm not looking for these political statements or whatever, but if I'm looking at issues where I'm so passionate, like respective maternity care, and I know, for example, currently that in the National Referrals or Health Center 3s or 2s, this is what's happening. I've gone to 2 or 3 of these. I've spoken to the in-charges. This is the reality. I triangulated and cross-checked with national medical stores, and they confirmed the supplies that are coming to these hospitals, okay? There is clearly a gap. Now I'm talking to a minister, or I'm talking to a district official, and they're saying, no, but you see, there's a lot of, we have enough supplies and what, and you have the facts. On top of the fact that you can tell them, because I see this happen. But you see, we've checked the national medical stores, they confirm this. At the health facilities, they've confirmed the same numbers. What you're saying is all contradictory to this. And they say, no. I mean, those people, I think, don't have the facts. I could digress a bit and give you another example. Recently, I was watching one of these programs that come in the night. I don't know, I always confuse the titles, but it's a panel of people discussing, yeah? And the person speaking on behalf of the government was talking about election results, and they were telling him, but in Omoro, they've rounded up the opposition people, the agents were all rounded up and taken in these cars whose numbers were disguised, and no, those are just rumors. But all the other people on the panel were saying, but this is true, they were taken. And then members of parliament earlier on in the earlier bulletins were all saying that we were rounded up because we were part of the group. Me, I was rounded up from this polling station, the other person was also taken away, our agents were taken away and whatever. Those facts are there. And for some reason, the person seated on the panel or the journalist moves on. Now, you see, the reason why I ask this question is that I don't even remember the last time I was a full-fledged journalist or a media person. But right now, my conscience is if I was seated in front of someone and I have the facts, and they tell me they are giving me what an American calls bullshit, I would throw it in their face. You could be wise to advise me and say, Mona, you can't do that. But I do not understand how my conscience can move forward when someone is telling a lie to me. when I know it's not true. So, educate me here and tell me, do we continue to absorb these lies?
No.
Is it ethical for me to say, but Honorable Ashraf, what you're saying is not true? What do we do? Because this is at the point where we need to begin to make a stand. And I'm not saying a stand to compromise our work or compromise our professions. I don't understand how we can continue to do our work if the people who are responsible for the decisions that we want to see made or changed, they come in and they say statements that are not true. And I'm not saying all the decision makers do that, no. Many decision makers, actually some will even be honorable enough to admit and say, you know what, this is not working, but we are going to find a solution. But if someone in a position of power sits in front of me and they start telling lies, how do I move past that when I have the facts?
You know, one time when I hosted the president, he was praising himself.
Mm-hmm.
He said, we have constructed roads, hospitals, schools. So what we are doing is really benefiting the communities. Then I also told him that it is true, Your Excellency, you have constructed hospitals, roads, and schools. But in the hospitals, there are very few drugs. Hospitals lack some equipment. Then I cited an example that this Regional Hospital, where you are seated here, it is just the other opposite. Then I asked him that why is it that the equipment which are not in the government hospitals, a lay person who has just a clinic across has an X-ray which is lacking in the government hospital. Then he said, you know, we are going to give them, the doctors, we are going to give them good salaries so that they abandon their clinics and work for the government better. But you know, when I was asking that question, the people outside and the people who were in the studio, they say, why is he asking this man? Why is he asking him that question? So they felt I was on the wrong. Then next time when he came in the studio, he said, I'm not going to entertain any question. I'm just going to talk. Then those ones who want to ask questions, tomorrow I will be in the Jinja, they will ask their questions. Then I felt like, I asked myself, then what am I doing here? So I went on with him. But when I sensed that he was about to end, then I brought in one question, he answered it. After answering that one, I brought in another one. So I asked him 5 questions. Then at last he said, okay, now that you have asked me the 5 questions, give the public also to ask 5 questions. So that is how I managed him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else, you have any input on that?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Maybe my submission on that, one, as journalists, we are supposed to be knowledgeable. Don't go in for a story before making research.
Good.
And one thing I don't believe in, actually I had a problem with one of my former editors where I previously worked. He's this kind of editor who never liked facilitating field work. He could only tell you, please do a phone call interview. A phone call interview can never help you get the information you want. When you have a facial interaction with your source, There are skills you must apply, the interpretative reporting skills. You read this person's body language, the facial expression, and get to know that this person is lying. And then when you get realized that this person is lying to me, don't throw it into the face of the source that you're lying. The next time you need him, he won't come. But just use your skills to dig deeper and derive more tricky questions. Thank you.
Okay. So I think, thank you all for your submissions. I think yesterday really gave us an opportunity to kind of build contexts along the side of some of the experiences that we've had, people who are working on maternal health. We had an opportunity to have Dr. Lukoda here talk to us about the findings from the districts that were targeted, and to get ushered into the understanding of how we can use media to do advocacy. It's really a platform, just as you see the blogs and what have you. And that's what we really intend to do. And one thing I would want us to appreciate is that as we move into this realm of using media to do an open field, that's the beauty of it. You can do so many things. You can do so many creative things. And within that, you would kind of create something new or find new ways. I can't promise you that the experience and the understanding and the appreciation is defined like this, but for every person, they get their own kind of aha effect, and they see things that they want to do, they run with effects and the like. Try as much as possible and build a certain level of versatility in you, in the sense that yes, you might be a radio traditional person or a TV traditional person or print media or whatever. Try to also take interest in how are the other media platforms working, because like people who are now reporting through blogs and online media and who are using real-time reporting are ahead of the curve. They are the new sources of information. A lot of people now have built-in collaboration with people themselves. So sometimes you find that the best viewed program on a TV or on a radio is not one where they are relying so much on the so-called experts who are seated in this room. You all remember the advent of Agatali Konfufu. Do you know how many people used to do whatever they have to do? Oh, every plan you would make with a person in the evening you had to think about Agatali Konfufu. Because the moment you talk to a person, can we meet at 8? We meet at 8. Your meeting is going to take long. My meetings are, I have to be home for Agatali Konfufu. Everything would always end with Agatali Konfufu. And the program started at what time?
10.
At 10. But you could see someone is determined to go and sit. But when you look at Agatali Konfufu, what made it so nice? What made it so special?
Local content.
Local content, and it was like iReports. It was no longer journalists. It was no longer the famous journalists of the TV stations who are so eloquent and they dress up and, no, people are only interested in people talking about things. Spices like what you call typical Lugambo, because those are the programs. In America, the biggest program elements that have taken on for the last few generations have been what? They call them, what do they call that programming? The one where they follow someone in real life. Reality TV. Yes, reality shows. Those are the programs. You will find the people literally year in, year out, seated there following the person. Because one, there is proximity. Another thing is that these people talk like them. And it's always beautiful to get a fresh breath of air when you hear someone talk about something that you didn't even expect. And then the color. Because TV stations sometimes will take a certain kind of corporate level or class or whatever. Agatali Konfufu could come from anywhere, at any time. And there was a natural ingredient that you will never know what's going to blow your mind on Agatali Konfufu on a daily. So these dynamics we also have to include in our work and think about how do we make our stories more interesting? How do we make them more dynamic? What is going to be the catch? What makes us different from the tradition? And going back into the new frame within which we are doing our profession right now, guys, we need to understand that real-time reporting has taken over. So sometimes